Good morning, everyone. We'll get started here in a few minutes. There's still people from rolling in, but just wanted to pop in and say good morning and let you know we'll get started here. All right, we'll get started. So good morning again. Welcome back to ITS Heartland members for session day week 3 of the 2020 ITS Heartland webinar series. My name is still Kurt Rotering, and I am the current past president of ITS Heartland and a traffic team leader for Olson. If you missed one of the last week's sessions, the recordings have been posted or will be posted to the ITS Heartland website. Just go to the annual meeting link on the website, and a link to the recordings are down and kind of on the left next to each week's date. So this week is being recorded as well and will be posted there later this week or early next week. Today we have another great lineup of presentations, vendors, and then this week is the Kansas State update. But before I get started, I first want to thank our sponsors, which you can see behind me. Their generous support has allowed us to provide these sessions to all of you for free. So a great thank you to HNTB, Trans Systems, Walter P. Moore, ADCO, Street Smart, Snyder and Associates, Econolite, HDR, Olson, SRF, JEO, Transcore, General Traffic Controls, and Image Sensing Systems. Links to their websites are all on the ITS Heartland website as well. So please go and visit and see what products and services they have to offer. So thank you again to our sponsors. Secondly, I want to give a shout out to your current ITS Heartland president, Slade Ingstrom. He has done a lot of work making sure these webinars are successful, from setting up all the Teams invites to producing the webinars as I'm talking right now. So Slade, thank you for being president this year and helping me out with these webinars. So with that, as we get going, please post any questions to the Q&A tab on the top right of your screen. If we don't get them answered during the call today, we'll provide answers to you afterwards. And then to start week 3 of the 2020 ITS Heartland webinar series, we have a vendor update from Craig Lutz and MoboTrex about their range of products.
Products offered by MoboTrex traffic control cabinets. One corner of every intersection you drive through, there's usually a silver cabinet, could be painted any color, that's actually got all the electronics that are actually running the intersection. And then the signal heads themselves. So where you see the red, yellow, and green lights, the arrows, we're actually making those housings that are up on the pole.
We offer traffic control cabinets that do everything for controlling the traffic for a particular intersection, the emergency vehicle preemption so that emergency vehicles can access the intersection. We also offer systems that do monitoring of that particular intersection or a corridor. A traffic control system is not just the control of the signal, it's assuring that the traffic flow is done properly, that the emergency vehicle preemption process works properly, that the actual control of the intersection is done safely, and that the information can be provided to the city. I think our real expertise is integration, the ability to make all of those systems work flawlessly and reliably.
One of the ways I think we show our expertise is coming up with custom things for customers. They give us kind of an idea of what they're looking for. We come up with a custom solution for them. The advantage of picking MoboTrex is you're going to get exactly what you asked for, and it's going to be a quality product. We build custom products that are customized per agency directly to their specification. And then we build it here in our 130,000 square foot facility to high quality standards.
What makes us experts is not only 50 years of experience in this industry, but being able to apply the best practices and making sure that we build the products that are not only meet the customer specifications, but are reliable at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of the weather conditions, the operating conditions, that those systems and that traffic is always going to be functional.
Great. Thank you, MoboTrex. Next, we have a presentation from Kate Hvizdos of SRF Consulting on truck overturn protection. Kate is an engineer at SRF Consulting Group in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Kate graduated from the University of Minnesota with a bachelor's in civil engineering and has been working in the engineering industry for over 6 years. Not to take any thunder away from Kate's presentation, but be warned, the first image she shows may make you cry. So with that, I'll hand over to Kate.
Hello, my name is Kate Hvizdos. I'm an engineer with SRF Consulting, and my presentation is top of its field, using ITS for truck overturn prevention. I'm beginning this presentation with a picture of a truck that has in fact rolled over. You can see that the top of this truck has been ripped open and quite a bit of beer has actually spilled out onto the side of the road. This image in particular is from 2018. It's in Wichita, Kansas. And specifically, it is at the intersection of K96 and Kellogg, or Kellogg is also sometimes referred to as US 54. While this image, as far as I know, is the only time that a beer truck has rolled over, it is not the only time that a truck has rolled over. In fact, it's quite common for this sort of thing to happen at this interchange. When we got involved with Kansas DOT, they told us that this ramp experienced around 1 truck rollover each month, which is obviously quite dangerous. We'll get into what we considered as solutions for this interchange and what we ended up designing. But first, I want to talk a little bit about why this spot in particular is so dangerous. To demonstrate exactly why this site is so dangerous, I have 2 pictures up on the screen. The first is of the bird's eye view of the intersection with K96 traveling north-south and US 54 or Kellogg traveling east-west. I also have a picture from the driver's perspective approaching the curve from southbound K96 to eastbound US 54 and what it would look like to them. From the driver's perspective approaching this curve, it looks pretty typical, nothing out of the usual, except that you do have that truck rollover sign warning you to go 30 miles per hour. However, I think as drivers, most of us know it is fairly easy to ignore those signs. However, if you look at this interchange from a bird's eye point of view, you can start to see where the problem is. At first, there is very little curve to this interchange. Going south, it's pretty straight. However, when you get to around that red arrow, the radius of the curve sharpens quite a bit. And if drivers have not properly slowed down to that 30 miles per hour, a lot of times they are risking overturn. Kansas has tried several different options to make this interchange safer. The first being your typical static signs, like you saw in the driver's perspective picture on the last sign, as well as pavement markings leading up to the interchange. They've also tried static signs with flashing beacons, where the beacons would flash 24/7 to try and draw attention to the warning. However, none of these methods have been met with very much success. In fact, the static signs with the flashing beacons have actually been removed since the beginning of this project and are no longer there. One thing that they did find some success with was the friction surface treatment. They added in some treatment to the surface of this curve to help stop trucks from rolling over even when they were going too fast. And while this did lower the rate of accidents, it wasn't quite as much as they were hoping for. And also with the surface treatment, it erodes quite quickly and requires a lot of maintenance to continue using this method. So KDOT started looking at yet another option. After these previous attempts were made, KDOT contacted us, SRF Consulting, to work with them to create a dynamic ITS option. This is something that they started calling a truck overturn prevention system, or TOPS, which is their name for it, though you can find a lot of different names for a similar system across the country. The premise of this system is pretty simple. You have some sort of detection method that determines whether a vehicle is a truck, and if it is traveling at an unsafe speed for the interchange. If those criteria are met, some sort of warning system will come on, telling drivers to slow down before they reach the interchange. Like I said, this has been used in a lot of different places around the country. We specifically looked at 4 states' implementation and their research, including Minnesota, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Oregon. Of these studies, they typically found about a 30 to 80% reduction of speed after the system was implemented, which is fantastic and something that we were hoping to replicate in Wichita. So there are a lot of different types of these systems all over the place that use different kinds of warning signs, whether they're flashing beacons, whether they are DMS signs, or whether they are LED or matrix signs that only light up with a static message when a vehicle meeting the criteria passes by. There's also a lot of different kinds of detection that are being used, including loop detection with several loops in succession to help classify vehicles and determine speed, though that's a little less common. It's a little bit harder to make those evaluations. More common would be non-invasive detection like radars or cameras being used to determine vehicle classification and speed. And then something that we saw a little bit were weigh and motion sensors, which would be placed in the pavement to determine the vehicle classification. In addition, the criteria for determining whether or not something is a truck varied in these detection systems. A lot of times, the detector would classify something as a truck based on length and height, though sometimes you would do number of axles, and we also saw, like with the sensors, using the weight of the vehicle passing overhead. So with all of these options, we sat down with KDOT to decide what the best option for this scenario would be. After working with KDOT and looking at all of our options, we made the following design decisions. First of all, we wanted to use a non-invasive detector, and we wanted to mount it to an existing gantry upstream of the interchange, saving us some costs of installing a new pole somewhere along the roadway. We didn't want to use the traditional loop or the weigh and motion sensors because that would disrupt the pavement and add in quite a bit of costs. Based on what we saw of non-invasive detectors on the market, we decided to use height and length-based classification to determine whether or not something was a truck. From there, we also made some decisions about the warning sign. So we decided to use a dynamic message sign for a few reasons. First of all, this is familiar to Kansas drivers. They know what to expect from it. They know to pay attention to these. And it also offers KDOT quite a bit of flexibility in the future. If they decide that truck speed warning isn't the specific text that they want on their DMS, they can change it at any time. And they can also use it for things like emergencies. If something were to come up, it can be multi-purpose. After deciding on the technology that we wanted to use for the site, we started to look at the placement and activation of these devices. We knew already that the detector was going to be mounted to that gantry upstream to help save costs, but the warning sign had a little bit of wiggle room for placement. We decided that to avoid things like low visibility, we would place it right before the bridge. The bridge has quite a high vertical curve, so any place after that would not be enough time to see the sign, react to it, and decelerate, whereas placing it beforehand gave drivers quite a bit of time, but not so much time that they would see the sign and then immediately forget about it. So we decided that that would be a great location for our sign. The right-of-way was adequate, but we wanted to make sure that our assumptions about the speed and patterns of drivers in this area were also correct. So we asked KDOT to put in some temporary detectors, one placed near the gantry where we wanted our detector to be, and one placed at the warning sign where hopefully vehicles would have started decelerating to go onto this ramp. We also conducted some in-person drives when we went down to Wichita. We took our giant rental pickup truck and drove the route several times to get a better feel of what it would be like to take it at 60 miles per hour versus 50 miles per hour. Actually, we did a little bit slower than that. We weren't so reckless, but to get a better feel of where decelerating was required and help us decide where we wanted to place these devices. So I'm not going to go into depth of all of the math that we did for our speed study. I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what typical driver behavior looks like at this interchange. We had our 2 temporary detectors out there for around 2 weeks, one again placed at the gantry and one placed right before the bridge where we wanted to have our warning sign installed. And from there, and from the data that we pulled from that, I started grouping them into different categories. So first of all, I isolated vehicles that were over 30 feet long, which means that they are very likely to be trucks. From there, I took the speed at each detector and grouped them into certain bins so that they could be made into a histogram. So you can see that you've got 0 from 40 miles per hour on the far left, and then 41 to 45 miles per hour, and so on and so forth as you move along the x-axis. On the y-axis there, you have the frequency or number of times that a truck was detected going in that speed category. So for the first one, the speed at the gantry, this is before they would necessarily be decelerating. The speed limit there is about 65 miles per hour. As you can see, you don't have a ton of trucks that are speeding, which is great. However, it does look like there are at least a couple daredevils who are going 70 miles per hour. When you go to the bridge, where they would hopefully have started decelerating, you can see that the speeds are a little bit lower. Instead of 55 being the most common speed, you have 50 miles per hour being the most common speed, and you have much fewer drivers going at 55 and 60 miles per hour, though unfortunately you still have some drivers going at 65 and 70 miles per hour. So as you can see, we still don't have drivers going at the 30 miles per hour we would necessarily want for them. However, they still have some time to decelerate and decelerate safely, even if they are that person who decides that 70 miles per hour is the speed that they're going to try and take this turn. From there, we ended up deciding that what we wanted to do was to turn the DMS warning sign on for drivers who at the gantry were going over 50 miles per hour. From these graphs, that seems like quite a bit. It seems like about half of the drivers are going over that speed. However, it's not as extreme as you might think. If you keep in mind that this is over 2 weeks, and on average, we were getting less than 30 trucks a day. If half of those trucks are activating the sign, it would be only about 15 times a day that that sign's going off, but it only stays on for a matter of seconds. So hopefully the drivers do not get fatigued from seeing that sign over and over again. That being said, with the way that we set up the system, if we decide later on that the 50 mile per hour cutoff is too high or too low, that can easily be adjusted in the detector settings and made to change later on. So the next steps for this project are all coming. So we finished up our design and the plan set went out in spring of 2020. The project was let in June of 2020. And we're looking at construction to start around March 2021 and finish in 2022. This was part of a much larger project with a lot of different ITS projects across the city of Wichita. Once the construction is finished and the TOPS system is in place, we will go back down to do some testing and calibration. So this will be a little bit of a fine tuning of exactly how long, for example, we want the warning sign to stay lit, how many seconds after a vehicle passes underneath the detector do we want the sign to turn on, and so on and so forth. And from there, we'll get a little bit of data gathered. I think also ideally, after this has been in place, we'll probably like to conduct some sort of speed study to see if it's had any effect, and hopefully we will see that reduction in accidents. So finishing up the slideshow, I want to make sure that I give thanks to our partners in this project. first and foremost, of course, is the Kansas Department of Transportation, who were our client in this project and who worked on the design alongside us and gave us input and the vision that they were looking for. Additionally, Trans Systems, who works very closely with KDOT, especially in their ITS area, coordinated quite a bit on this project. And then some of my coworkers at SRF Consulting are listed here as well, who had quite a hand in developing this project. So thanks for your attention and your time on this presentation. I'll be opening it up to questions and answers, as well as leaving my contact information up on the slide if you would like to reach out to me after the session is over. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kate. I see one question was posted that is a very important question from our next presenter. He's curious about what happened to all that beer that spilled. I guess he was one that cried at the beginning of the presentation as well. So if you know that answer, we are desperate to know, Kate. So if you are listening, feel free to answer, or we'll be sure to hit you up afterwards. But thank you. That was a great presentation and an interesting, unique project. I'm sure there are numerous other locations where this can be applied as well. Next, we have another presentation from two familiar faces, Matt Volz and Tom Hein. They're going to present about ITS Heartland's TSMO University. Matt is a senior transportation project manager at HDR in Kansas City. Matt graduated with his BS in civil engineering from North Dakota State and his master's from Kansas State University. I've become good friends with Matt over the years only because of his affiliations with both of these universities. Both have a small spot in my heart. So. Matt was also the second president of ITS Heartland way back in the early 2000s. Yes, he's that old. And then he was the treasurer for the following 16 years or so. So if you ever need any history on ITS Heartland, Matt is your go-to person. Tom Hein is the public affairs officer for the Wichita Metro District for Kansas Department of Transportation and is also the Whichway manager there in Wichita. Tom is also a past president of ITS Heartland. He presided in 2016 to 2017. The TSMO University, which Matt and Tom are presenting, was a hugely successful project completed by ITS Heartland over the last few years. So I'm thrilled that Matt and Tom have agreed to present on it. All right, guys.
Okay. Thank you very much for having us today. We're going to talk about the ITS Heartland TSMO University, which is our TSMO education program, the final results of that project that took place over the last few years here within ITS Heartland. Presenting today is myself. I'm Matt Volz. I am a project manager with HDR Engineering in Kansas City. I'm also the project manager for the TSMO University project. Tom?
And I'm Tom Hein with the Kansas Department of Transportation. I'm a public affairs manager for the Wichita Metro and also the Whichway Traffic Management Center manager and the administrator for this project for ITS Heartland.
All right, so a little bit of background on the project real quick. There was a Sharp 2 grant program that came out in 2016. The FHWA was looking for a better way to deliver TSMO to the masses around the country. ITS Heartland proposed a program of monthly webinars, in-person TSMO training, train-the-trainer sessions, and then a repository for all these materials on our website. We applied for the Sharp 2 funding back in 2016. We received an award for $100,000 in 2017, and then another one for $100,000 in 2018, thanks to Tom, going back to them. FHWA liked what we were doing so far and really appreciated all the effort we put into it, so they gave us another $100,000 to continue our program. And the reason that they wanted to do this was back in 2015 to 2016, the FHWA was doing what they called ROFs, or Regional Operation Forums. What they would do is they would gather 7 to 8 states together at one time, somewhere around the country. 2 or 3 people from each of those states would come and they would spend 5 days presenting about TSMO and operational strategies. Now, they were only reaching a few people from each state, plus it was really hard to get the right people there. To ask people to give up you know, a whole week's worth of time to come to a TSMO seminar was a big ask. They did modify that a little bit and went to what they called the ROL for Regional Operational Leadership Forums, which was 2.5 days. Again, similar format though. They were gathering all the states together, a few people from each state for 2.5 days. But they just weren't getting the penetration that they wanted into the DOT. So again, that's why they went out with a Sharp 2 grant program, looking for better ways to educate folks on TSMO. And that's how Heartland came to win the award, or win the grant awards for the project. So some of the results for phase 1, which is our webinar and live session phase, we did 8 webinars plus 2 live in-person training sessions. Live in-person training sessions, we did one of those at ITS Heartland, another one up in Omaha. We reached over 500 people with that webinar and training program, and we had really good public agency penetration. As you can see on the graphs, on the pie charts on the right-hand side there, of the people that we trained, 2/3 of them were from the public sector and 1/3 were from the private sector. And that's really important because we wanted to make sure that we hit both public sector and private sector, because we're all in this as a team trying to accomplish operational reliability and improve safety. And it takes a partnership between the consulting sector and the public sector. And then on that lower pie chart, which you see of the public sector people there, a lot of those were ITS Heartland. So 72% were ITS Heartland public sector. So again, we had really good public agency penetration here within Heartland. We also had some non-ITS Heartland folks that joined our training sessions, as well as some FHWA and folks from the universities as well. And then in phase 2, which is our train the trainer phase of the program, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, we did 2 sessions, one in September of 2018 and one in September of 2019, where we trained 18 subject matter experts and 21 subject matter experts, respectively. In total, for all of the phase 1 and phase 2, we did 44 hours of live training. We developed a whole bunch of training PowerPoints, reports. We produced an infographic that we've used at many conferences. And we gave a whole bunch of presentations at national meetings to other ITS chapters, to national meetings like ITS America and ITE. And then we've put everything up on the ITS Heartland website. And I'll show a screenshot of that here in just a little bit where you can go and pull down that information from. So real quick, TSMO University phase 1, which is our webinar and live in-person training phase. We did started off with an overview of TSMO, a TSMO 101. Basically laid a foundation so everybody had kind of the same general knowledge of TSMO. And then we went on to talk about TSMO and safety, how TSMO can improve reliability, how we can communicate TSMO, performance measures, CV and AV impacts, and then safety analysis. And again, we've archived all of this at itsheartland.org, along with PDH certificates. So if you need PDHs this year, and a lot of people do because we're not going to that many conferences, you can actually go and download one of these webinars and then download the certificate after you've completed the webinar. I'll let Tom talk about our phase 2 train the trainer.
Our phase 2 train the trainer was a very exciting part of our project. We had 2 different groups come together for 2 days where we sat down with representatives from all 5 of our ITS Heartland DOTs. We had Metropolitan Planning Organization people, and we brought in consultants as well, because as Matt said, we're all a team in this, and TSMO extends beyond just the DOTs, and we need those other team players that we work with to understand and to help us with TSMO. So these 2-day seminars focused on presentation skills especially. We learned from Nigel McPherson how people learn and how we need to present TSMO items to them so that they pick this up and have a better understanding of it and maybe incorporate it into their culture back at their DOT or back at their business. We focused in phase 2 on 3 target audiences, especially those audiences within DOTs that need to hear about TSMO and need to understand it and possibly bring it into their DOT culture, and that was the executive group. You talk to them a little bit differently than you do those folks out in the field, and so it was a little bit a higher level of TSMO training and information and how it can be a benefit to those executive staff within the DOT. Then we talked to operations people, the planners, the designers, the folks who work with ITS and the other TSMO tools that are in the toolbox that maybe they don't think about. Maybe they don't cognitively say, hey, I'm using a TSMO method here. We brought that along to them and say, hey, you need to think about some of these tools as you're going through your normal work. And then we also talked with the field people. We talked about how you talk to a maintenance person or a construction engineer who's actually out in the field, and how TSMO works for them, and how they need to embrace these TSMO tools. Generally, they're already doing it, but maybe an acceptance of the whole package and picking those tools that work for them best too. But anyway, we looked at those three audiences and designed different PowerPoint presentations for them and different sets of guidelines on what you want to cover if you were to present to one of those audiences. I thought it was a very valuable part of our project. We had a lot of interactive groups. As we said, Nigel taught us about how people learn, and that's so important when you're up making a presentation. We actually made presentations during this two-day workshop for each other. Everyone got up and presented a TSMO topic of their choice, and then we all critiqued it. So there was a lot of learning going on. It was a very exciting process, and I just thought it was a very valuable part of this project. So we not only put the information to TSMO out in phase one, but then in phase two, we focused on, well, how are we going to go out and tell people about it and get them as excited about it as the TSMO champions are.
Yeah, I'll agree with Tom. It really was a good training session. Even though I was one of the co-facilitators, I even learned a lot just talking to other folks, other TSMO professionals from around the region, and learning about how people learn and how to give better presentations to those particular groups. And the real value, I think, was everybody got to sit down and talk with each other and talk about TSMO and just share their experiences, which was probably the thing that I liked the most about it. We also worked on the Tom project.
Yes, we had a little bit of fun at these too. One of the presentations that I gave, and I gave it often throughout the life of this project, instead of going and talking, I would go and talk about TSMO, but I'd call it the Tom project. Transportation Operations Management is what I thought of. So I called it the Tom project. It got a few laughs and it let people, they still learned about TSMO, but I pushed it out as the Tom project. And part of that Tom project is, you know, I give all the information on TSMO, and at the end, somebody inevitably would raise their hand and say, well, why do you call it the Tom project? So I would go into that about how the name TSMO was not always accepted by people. It's kind of a hard thing to remember what TSMO stands for. So, you know, we had a little fun with it, and I'd call it the Tom project, and I would lay out those initials and say it's Transportation Operation Management. So it's the Tom project. I don't know why the feds didn't call it that. So that's kind of the fun with it and the game. And then I would always pick some people out in the audience and have some slides made that showed, okay, well, we could have called it the Tracy Project. And in this case, it's Transportation Reliability Adjustments, Creating Yields. And that's what TSMO is and does. So each person that I picked out of the audience, whatever their name was, we would come up with these names for it. And we could have called it the Tracy Project, and we could have called it the Brent Project. So there were a little bit of levity to it and kind of poking a little bit of fun at the name TSMO, because TSMO as a title is not always popular. Some states don't use it at all, but they still use the TSMO toolbox. So we had some fun at these training sessions.
Yep, there's been the Matt project, the Kurt project, I think. I think you did everybody, picked on everybody equally though. Yep. One thing I will say is if anyone wants to have this Train the Trainer or the Tom project presented, just contact us and we'll see if we can arrange something, because it really is an informative program and I think you'll get a lot out of it. And I know the people who are on this webinar or listen to the webinar today who attended it would agree with that 100%. Again, we talked about the repository for all the material. So this is a screenshot of the ITS Heartland website. This is the TSMO University tab that's on that website. And right there, you can go and you can actually download the PowerPoints or the PDFs from all the train the trainer modules, all of the webinars. We've also put up there a lot of the federal reports from FHWA, from AASHTO, from NCHRP about TSMO, as well as a lot of brochures that the FHWA produced over the last couple of years. So just a ton of material up there. You can download it, you can use it to present to your organization or your agency to spread the word about TSMO. So anyways, a good one-stop shop for all that information. And our infographic, Tom?
The infographic. We took the TSMO University out on the road. We went to a number of conferences where we made presentations, and a lot of times we also did a poster session, and this was our poster. So it was kind of a roadmap of TSMO awareness and how this project evolved and how we came down the road from left to right. Started with what current TSMO activities are happening in the 5-state region in ITS Heartland. And then we went into our phase 1 of the project where we had the training sessions and the webinars. And we went into phase 2 where we talked more specifically about how do we train people about TSMO and who the various audiences were. So it was great to do one-on-ones with people who would look at our poster and say, well, that's a different poster at a poster session. And so they'd come up and ask questions, and it gave us that opportunity to tell them more about TSMO and to tell them more about ITS Heartland and our project TSMO University.
Yeah, and you may not be able to read it on the screen, but understand this thing was a 4-foot by 8-foot poster, so it was huge. So you can actually read it when you go to a poster session. We did get some recognition. We were one of the 4 National Operations Center of Excellence 2019 National TSMO Award winners. We won in the category of Improving Agency TSMO Capability. That picture there is myself, Tom, Randy Johnson, and Patrick Sun, who is the director of the National Operations Center of Excellence at TRB in 2019, accepting the award. We also won the IT Education Council Innovation in Education Best Project Award in 2019. And then we also won the IT TSMO Council Best Project Organizational Award. And that's a picture of all 3 awards right there. That picture right there is myself, Tom, Nedja McPherson, Tracy Scriba, and Kurt Rotering, who was president of ITS Heartland at the time, taking a picture with all 3 of our awards. But we asked ourselves the question, what were the actual results? How did we actually impact TSMO within the ITS Heartland region? So a few of you have received a survey asking a few of these basic questions. Was TSMO awareness improved? Are we better at communicating TSMO to stakeholders? Is there more TSMO planning taking place in the Heartland? Have more TSMO projects been implemented within ITS Heartland? And then finally, is TSMO mainstreamed within your agency? So we asked these questions of a few people and got some answers back, and Tom and I are going to run through those. So first question, was TSMO awareness improved?
Absolutely. I think that our webinars, our presentations touched a lot of people. The information that we shared and the TSMO conversation that has evolved and happened because of this ITS project has made awareness more widespread. And we really think, although a lot of it is anecdotal information, we do have the numbers from our presentations, but really I think it goes way beyond that. So it is anecdotally that yes, we think the TSMO awareness was improved through this project.
Yep, I would agree 100%. Okay, are we better at communicating TSMO to stakeholders?
I think we are. Just the awareness that people have advanced their awareness of TSMO and their ability to communicate. Those people that came to our Train the Trainer sessions, wow, they are definitely better at communicating TSMO to stakeholders. And we are continually improving our TSMO tools that you can use. Just go to the website and download anything. It's all available there to use in your own TSMO presentations or whatever, if you just need to learn or send somebody to learn. We've got those things out there. So I think we're better at communicating TSMO. Matt, you?
I would agree 100%. That last comment there is it's kind of telling. We're communicating TSMO, we're communicating the benefits of TSMO, but one of our respondents said we're not selling TSMO yet. Capacity expansion still, number one on the list of strategies for reducing congestion, improving reliability. But that's all part of the education experience, though. Okay, is more TSMO planning taking place in the ITS Heartland region?
Wow, we got a response back from somebody, capital letters. Yes, that's right. We are incorporating TSMO more into planning. Iowa especially has taken the lead there with their program plan, their business processes, and they're already rewriting some of those. So they're on phase 2 of their program plan. Missouri has developed a program plan, and they have key TSMO groups that meet regularly across the state, and so they're advancing TSMO in their culture. Nebraska is now developing a 10-year TSMO plan. Oklahoma has had some special workshops, and they plan to put a plan in place in 2021. Kansas does not have a formal TSMO plan, but we certainly are incorporating those tools from the toolbox, and we still are trying to crack that with a formal TSMO plan, but we're not there quite yet.
All right. And then a question here is, has more TSMO been implemented within the ITS Heartland region?
I don't think there's any doubt that TSMO is growing in the ITS Heartland region. It's hard to say if there is more because, so many of these tools we already used in the past, and we continue to use those. But I think we have engaged more of our DOT audience in TSMO techniques and awareness. So we are seeing more of those. Of course, Iowa and Missouri are the leaders in our region, but I think all the states have incorporated more TSMO. So yes, I think we can say almost a capital yes on that.
Yeah, definitely. And with potential revenue shortfalls coming up because of lower vehicle miles traveled and less gas tax revenue, TSMO may be held up as a more valuable strategy. It's doing more with less. It's taking your existing infrastructure, squeezing more reliability, more safety out of it with these operational strategies, these TSMO strategies for less cost. I think that's going to be really important here in the very near future. Okay. Final question, Tom, is TSMO mainstreamed within agencies?
Well, that's a big one. That's a big maybe. That's not quite a yes, but some are mainstreaming TSMO into their operation. I think of Iowa and Missouri especially, but maybe the other states aren't quite mainstream. Maybe no one's really mainstream, but I think we're getting there. There is some resistance to it here and there, but as the future of handling traffic problems and as new transportation methods are emphasized, I think TSMO techniques will become more mainstream, and we'll see that in the Heartland region. We need more TSMO, and I think it's a natural. I think it'll happen. So yeah, I think we're getting to the point where we're mainstreaming, but I don't think we could say that quite yet.
Yeah, nope, I agree with that. Overall, I think the project was a success. We achieved our goals. We pushed out TSMO education to a lot of people within the ITS Heartland region, produced a lot of materials that other folks are able to actually use now and have been using to present TSMO and sell TSMO, I guess, if you will, to the different groups within their agencies, as well as consulting firms and other groups. Has it made an impact in the Heartland region? Definitely. Tom, any final comments?
I think it's been a great project, and I'd like to thank ITS Heartland for that opportunity for us to do this and to share TSMO. We've had the Kool-Aid. We like the Kool-Aid. Let's keep sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to ITS Heartland and to the FHWA Office of Operations and Tracy Scriba for allowing us to create this program. It's been a lot of fun. So with that, we'll take questions if we're able, and we'll answer questions in the chat pod, and we'll take some live questions if we're able to do that. With that, thank you very much.
you all.
All right. Well, thanks, Matt and Tom. Yeah, I see some questions popping in on the sidebar. Matt, I know you're around if you can answer those. I had the honor of attending both of the Phase 2 Train the Trainer sessions, and the material that was presented, as well as the discussion between participants, was absolutely top-notch. I think Nedgel needs to be a professor in his next life, because he can definitely keep everyone engaged with laughter while ensuring the topics and ideas are conveyed to the attendees. I'm also glad to see that more TSMO is planning on taking place throughout our region. Obviously, it's important, and all of us think it's important. So it's good that that's being conveyed to the leadership, and they're agreeing. So it's moving forward. So thank you, Matt and Tom, for all your hard work on this project. It was a great project, and also thank you for that great presentation. Also, now to go back to the important question from Kate's presentation before. Kate did answer that question in the Q&A. If you want to go over there and look. So I know the suspense was killing everyone. So, all right. So our next presentation is a vendor showcase from Street Smart Rental. I apologize.
Hi, I'm Mike Granger. I founded Street Smart Rental in 1999. We rent supplemental equipment to traffic control companies.
Today we have one of the largest fleets of traffic safety equipment in the country. It's all backed by our great team. Street Smart allows customers any size to bid on projects that they may or may not have the equipment for. They may have it, but they don't know for sure if they'll have it when the job actually starts 3 months from now. Our customers are able to bid on projects with confidence that they know they can get the equipment when they don't have it available. And what Street Smart does that is unique is that we do not provide any traffic safety services. We don't do any lane closures. We don't set cones, barrels. We don't have boots on the ground around the country. Those are our customers. We provide them equipment when they need it, where they need it, to help them bid more work and win more work.
When we talk with prospects or even our current customers about our flexible rental terms, sometimes their jaw hits the ground a little bit. We can provide very economical rental rates to them, which allows them to still add margin on their projects, so they can not only ensure the safety for their workers and the motorists, but also make a buck. This equipment is obviously out in work zones. Stuff breaks, we get it. But it's kind of what has helped define us is how we react when things aren't going great. So whether it's shipping out a replacement board because one got totaled, or walking a customer that's physically at the board on how to rewire the battery system. That's what our team does all day, every day, even on the weekends.
Our customers appreciate the fact that we're able to get them equipment anywhere, anytime. And we like to say around here that we're like the easy button.
That was easy.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike, and Brady. Now our last presentation for the day is our Kansas State update from Shari Hilliard, ITS Heartland's Kansas State Director. Shari is the ITS engineer for the Kansas Department of Transportation and has been at this position for the past 15 plus years. So if you ever need to know about anything regarding ITS in the state of Kansas, Shari is definitely your go-to person. Shari has also been involved in ITS Heartland for a number of years, and we're really glad to have her on the board. So Shari, I'm excited to hear what is new at KDOT. And Slade, I'm not getting any sound through, so I'm not sure if you have to reshare. We haven't hit our quota of one technical problem today yet, so thank you, Slade, for making sure we hit that. No. So. All right, we'll get going here shortly.
Good morning. I'm Shari Hilliard. I'm the ITS engineer for Kansas, and I'll be providing our state update today. So let me share my screen. Our staff hasn't changed a lot from last year. Brian Gower is still our bureau chief. Myself and Gary Olson make up the ITS unit, and Michael Flory is our scout liaison located in Kansas City. We're excited to have two new embedded engineers, and they are James Newton from Burns & McDonnell and Taylor McHenry from HDR. They're both working about half-time for us, and we hope to have them working with us over the next couple years. Over the past 6 months, we've had two big initiatives. The first one being the replacement of our ATMS system. We selected a product offered by Southwest Research Institute called Active ITS. It's open source software, and this is based on the same software that Florida and Texas developed and that are branded as SunGuide and Lone Star. It's also used by many other states. We branded our system CATES, which stands for Kansas ITS, and you can see our logo here that's on the software. We're excited to have the software. It has a lot of neat features. There's a thin client mobile app, which can be used for basic sign and camera control with a browser login. It has much better graphics capability. It's a lot easier to get a graphic put into a message, and you can see one of the messages we've used in Wichita recently here. It's got a desktop video wall, which is very easy to build. It's simply selecting cameras and dragging it to the desktop. You can kind of customize your own video wall. It's very easy to configure travel times and use event management. Also has good performance reporting capability. We're upgrading from a much older software, and so this is a big step ahead for us, and we're excited to be using it into the future. The other big initiative has been the update of our candrive.org website. This is based on the Castle Rock's OneWeb platform. In addition, KDOT also updated its road condition reporting system and has adopted the CARS system that is offered by Castle Rock and used by a lot of other states. The website offers personalized accounts, email alerts for specific routes. There's a nearby results tray shown here, so if you select an event, it shows what's happening nearby and camera views that may apply for any specific area. There's a commercial vehicle mode that truckers can turn on that shows things like our TPIM's truck parking availability, snapshots of the rest areas, and things like width and speed restrictions. There's a speed and radar layer. You can see the radar layer here from our last snowstorm. One other thing we did was we incorporated our whichway.org website. It used to be a standalone website. Now it's pretty much seamless on the map going to the Whichway area. You can either zoom to the area to see the Whichway devices, or you can select the Whichway icon here, or you can enter the Whichway URL to see that. The website updates were deployed in parallel with our ATMS updates, so we were very busy over the last couple months coordinating with the various vendors and internal staff. It all worked very well. We launched both systems in October, and we've got very positive feedback from the public on the website so far. This is just a screenshot of the Whichway area that you can get to by using the whichway.org URL. It's got all the same features. You can jump back to the statewide view just by selecting the icon here. There's also a link for KC Scout, which is a totally different website, but you can go to that from here as well. We have 2 TMCs in Kansas that we help manage. The first one's in Wichita, as we already discussed. The manager's Tom Hein. Operations support is provided by Trans Systems, and operator staffing is provided by Trans Systems and Sedgwick County 911 during the day. The TMC has been operating 24/7 since last December. Currently, they've been doing remote operations since March, since they're co-located with the 911 center, and those operators can't really operate remotely just for safety and having less people in the center. They've been, our TMC operators with Trans Systems have been remote since March. One of the big things they're working on, as I already mentioned, was the CATES deployment. They've been testing, configuring devices and all that type of thing that comes with that type of deployment. In addition, they're providing support statewide for any messages our district staff need. They have the ability to enter CARS road condition updates into the CANDrive system, and they've been monitoring our truck parking availability system, our TPIM system, making sure that when rest areas are closed, they coordinate with the districts and we get that information out into our feed and out to truckers. Kansas City Scout is the other TMC. That's a partnership with MoDOT. Randy Johnson's the manager, and staffing support is provided by CAPS. Recent initiatives they've been working on, they've integrated Waze and Haas alerts into their ATMS software. They are also working 90% remote due to COVID considerations, and they have the ability to go 100% remote if needed. One of the things they've completed recently is a TMC video wall upgrade. They chose to use smart TVs, which are much less expensive than a traditional video wall system. So they saved a lot of money there, and I think those are working well, and that is shown in the picture here. They are also working with Mid-America Regional Council, coordinating with them on a regional TIM committee that was started, probably 6 months or so ago. That got slowed down a little bit by COVID, but it's getting started again, and that should be a good effort for the whole area. Construction updates. We did complete recently a 60 camera replacement project at Scout. We will be starting a K10 Q warning system project this month. That is in the Lawrence, Kansas area. Both of these projects were slowed down a little bit by supply chain issues during the COVID shutdown, but not significantly. They probably were not delayed more than 1 or 2 months. In 2021, we are starting construction in Wichita on a couple projects. There will be new devices. There is a truck rollover and queue warning system that will help areas where we've had a lot of crashes. And we will be relocating our fiber backbone as part of a major road project in that area. For Kansas City Scout, we are planning to let a communication backbone upgrade, which will include sign retrofits. That project should be let in the late spring. Statewide, also probably for letting in the late spring, we will be working on a project to replace about 30 signs and add several new devices. We're continuing our TIM training efforts statewide through our partnership with KU Fire and Rescue Training Institute. The statewide TIM committee that we set up 3 or 4 years ago will be updated this fall. We've had several of our champions that were originally a part of the effort retire, so we'll be reaching out to fire and law enforcement to fill those positions and kind of plan direction for the future. We have been able to have several in-person trainings as shown in the picture with the masks during the COVID period. But to make our training efforts a little more flexible during this period, we are working on online training. There have been some challenges due to some lack of technology by some of the participants, but we hope to work through that and be able to offer online training within the next 6 months. We do have an innovative technology group. Mike Floberg is the director of that, and he's working on a lot of neat projects. Recently, he released a connected and automated vehicle implementation plan, and we had a series of workshops with lots of our partners such as KTA, Aviation, Department of Commerce, to kind of talk about 2 pilot projects that we may want to implement in the next year or 2. Through our IKE program, we have an innovative technology grant program that recently we received applications for, and I think that they should be getting ready to award that soon and pick those projects. There's also a rural broadband effort, and Mike is overseeing installation of microduct on 3 of our routes, which will help allow various utilities to get access to conduit along those routes to make those connections for the rural areas. I've shown a map here of some of the other things Mike is working on. So lots of interesting stuff going on. If you have any questions about that, I'm sure Mike would be glad to talk to you about it. Lastly, we will be issuing a couple of RFPs this spring. One will be for our GMS signed contract, and the other one will be for the statewide ITS device maintenance. Again, hope to have those out in February or March, and we'll look forward to seeing what kind of responses we get. That's all I have for now. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat and we'll try to get them answered. Have a good day.
All right, thanks, Shari. Yeah, it looks like a good broad range of projects going on there in Kansas. So thank you for that update. That was the last of our presentations for this, the 3rd session of 5 for our 2020 ITS Heartland virtual webinar series. Next week will be a little different. Amy Ford with ITS America's Mobility on Demand Alliance will be leading a live discussion that will include industry experts from across the country. So be sure to attend that one. Also, I want to highlight again, as we have the last couple weeks, that our 2021 annual meeting has been moved to the fall to November 8th through the 10th. The board decided to move this already to the fall to have the best chance of all of us meeting in person next year. So please save these dates and hopefully we'll see everyone in Overland Park next year. With that, I want to thank our sponsors again. Please go to our website and visit all of their websites to thank them for providing this to you guys for free. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and we'll see you next Wednesday for our 4th session. All right, thank you.